You find me?
I've got you. Yep. Okay, so I don't know that I actually know the answer to this question, but hopefully somebody else will. So you say if someone is considering entering a quilt in a competition, how important is it to stick with all batiks or regular cotton quilt fabric? I'm using batiks for all of the applique on Simply Dreaming and have Kona cotton white as the background. With that in mind, what type of fabric would you use for the backing? And do we have any other tips for possible competition quilt? I would put a regular cotton on the background rather than a batik. The batiks I found, they're a much crisper fabric, so your quilting stitches won't sink into them quite as prettily as they will on regular cotton fabric. So any regular cotton. If you're using the Kona cotton on the front, then maybe you could match that on the back. I think anything goes. I haven't actually entered a quilt in a competition in a really long time, like well over a decade. Although I will say, do you all know Gina Perks from the Copper Needle? She's actually here in Payson, Arizona, but she is a long arm quilter. She's also a Bonina dealer. She was at Paducah last week teaching, and she sent me a little video of Daryl Leach's Yellow Submarine quilt, which won third place at
Yes,
Paducah.
wonderful. That's wonderful. Wow.
Still excited about that, but I don't know that there are any rules or regulations about mixing types of fabric. I think if you're happy with it and it's got your workmanship on it, I think you'll be good.
Okay, I just didn't know.
One of the, you might actually connect with Daryl in the Facebook group and see if
Okay.
she has anything. Let me see. Not all together. Well, page we want group. Let's see. Actually, she's not in the Facebook group. The only comment I've ever received when I've entered a quilt in a competition was from Libby Lehman when she judged Go Bedazzle way back in 2010. And she had a very light-hearted, sarcastic comment in her judging comments. And she said, please trim all of your thread ends on the back quilt next time. And so that's something that you might look out for.
Okay.
And I had actually free motion that, and on the Bonina machine, when you use the thread cutter, it will draw both of the threads down to the back, and you end up with little 1/2-inch long tails. So make sure that your thread ends are nice and neat on the back of the quilt, although it apparently is not it's not a disqualifying event if you leave hundreds of them, so I don't know if anybody else has any comments or suggestions on what makes a great competition quilt. Now would be a really good time to let us know about that.
Yeah.
If you'd like to pop something in the in the chat. Anne says, if using white fabric on the quilt top, make sure that any different colored thread used for piecing should be trimmed so it won't show through before you layer it. Yeah, especially if you're using white fabric. You really want to be careful that you don't have any odd thread bits underneath it because they will show through.
Yeah, I planned on in some of the scenes where the applique comes together and you've actually got a piece of the background fabric that you'll be stitching in that seam and the applique. I plan to switch threads and just use the white on the part that is the background fabric and then switch to the color of the applique that I'm joining together.
Okay, that sounds like a brilliant idea. One other thing for Simply Dreaming, when the applique actually goes into the seam allowance, every now and then it's a tendency to shift a little bit. If you
Yeah.
use double-sided quilter's tape to hold that seam instead of pins, then you'll get spot on 100% accurate joins with the stitching.
Have you tried using a walking foot with that? Does that help? Because it always seems to, I'm pretty good at pinning, and I'm gonna try the tape suggestion that you said. That sounds like a good idea. But it just seems like it always pulls that under layer different than the top layer, even though they meet up perfectly before I start stitching. Would a walking foot help that?
Yes, yes, it would. Does your machine have dual feed on it?
Yeah.
Definitely use dual feed, but a walking foot will help even more. I know on the Boninas, we've got the dual feed and it is great for piecing. But if I'm going to be quilting in the ditch, let's say, I will go to the walking foot because that's it's a little bit more than the dual feed. So yes, you might try the walking foot as well. Another thing that you might want to do, especially for piecing the blocks together in each row, would be use the embroidery design to do the piecing for you. I think it shows up in month 9. So you can use it in any of the months where you're simply joining the blocks on each row together or on each side. Because then if you have the double-sided tape holding the 2 pieces of fabric together, the nice thing about the piecing is that you completely eliminate any drag from the foot.
So you're talking about the embroidery file that is seaming, doing the 1/4 inch seaming. Yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
you have it in month 7 also.
it should. Yeah, it doesn't, because all of the blocks are the same height anyway. So yeah, if it's in month 7, let me have a look here.
7 is that flower border that goes around, and
Yeah, it is in month 7.
they're a little bit bigger than some of those blocks are bigger than an 8-inch block, but because it's kind of a with that one big
Yeah,
flower
those
piece.
7 had the extra because that was kind of on the inside of the outside border, so it had a little bit extra fabric to go into the center of the quilt.
Yeah,
So
good.
that one, that one works. Yes,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
you are welcome. So Chantel has a comment here. She was a scribe for her guild's last quilt show. We had a national judge. The only fabric-related comments were about color placement and color choice, never anything about mixing batiks and regular cotton. So that's good to know. And I
Yeah,
think the
great.
colors chosen that I've seen in Facebook are actually really pretty together. And then Gloria said you want to make sure that your your binding has fabric. So your binding needs to be full all the way to the fold because they don't like empty binding. And then Joyce says she's been dinged for the mitring of her binding. So be really careful with your binding. The no hands pipe binding goes down really well with the judges. Oh, you're muted here.
That's what I want to use is that piped binding. So I
Yeah,
know that they're real particular about binding, and will they accept that?
absolutely.
Okay. All
Yes,
right, great.
yes.
I really like that method.
Good. I love it too. And yeah, there's absolutely no reason why the judges wouldn't love it as well if it's well executed. So make sure you've got your corners mitered beautifully, and also, as Gloria said, make sure that your quilt is all the way into the fold, which it should be. You know, the piping actually helps with that because it adds that little bit of bulk in the binding. So I don't
Yeah.
think you would have any problems there.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Okay.
Sarah. And thanks
Uh,
everybody else. I appreciate it.